Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jeff Wallace here, and welcome to another episode of Chasing Elephants. I am super excited because, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to embark upon an incredible summer. And so my brother Brent, he's in the lab creating some amazing content for our Wonderbox. And so whenever he goes writing in books, like first of all, the way that the brother research is incredible. Like, I'm always in awe at the depth of his research. Like, he gets lost in the research, and so he's in the dungeon right now creating some incredible resources. So I was like, hey, you know what? I don't want you to come up for air today, brother. You stay right there, focused, and I'll jump in and talk to our friends, let them know where you are, and then you come up for air in preparation for our SLU 101 that will kick off this Monday. And so we're super excited about that. And so we'll go 5 weeks in Orlando, 1 week in San Antonio. We will send students, or actually walk with students through Europe for our 301 right before the Olympics. So that's going to be amazing. And then also we'll have our 201 experience in Washington, D.C. And so definitely asking for all of our listeners, please keep us in prayer, our team in prayer, as we teach a generation how to tell a different story with their life, and teach them how to think, how to dream, how to lead at the feet of Jesus. So I'm hanging out with us today. And actually, today is this episode is a really important episode to me personally, because I want to talk about a holiday that just passed, or just kicked off on the 19th of June, which was Wednesday, which is the Juneteenth holiday. And many people, I'm sure you've heard people talk about Juneteenth, and maybe you don't know exactly where the holiday originated from or why we have the holiday and everything. So really, I just wanted to honestly just give content and context of our Juneteenth holiday and where it originated from, and why we actually celebrate it right now. And so I think that's what this episode is, as we are coming off of this kickoff of Juneteenth, just wanting to just share a little bit about the holiday. And so what is it really when we think about Juneteenth? Let's just jump right into it. What is it really? Well, as many of you historians know, in 1863, during the American Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which was a decree that freed more than 3 million enslaved people living in the Confederate States, and so they were free at this moment. But about 2 years from 1863 to about 1865, 2 years passed before the news actually reached African Americans that were enslaved in the state of Texas. And it really wasn't until the Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, around June 19th, 1865, that the state's residents finally learned that that slavery had been abolished. So think about it for a minute. 1863 takes place. This is a great movement. President Lincoln, he declares and issues the Emancipation Proclamation. And so now 3 million slaves are deemed free. But here in Texas, that word had not traveled for whatever reason. And so for 2 more years post Emancipation Proclamation, you still had African Americans that were residing in Texas that were still living as if the Emancipation Proclamation had not taken place. And so once the word reaches to the residents there in Texas, immediately, and I mean, I can imagine I'm imagining so, but immediately all of the now formerly enslaved people began celebrating with prayer and fasting and this big, not fasting, but prayer and having feast and singing songs and dancing. And there was this festive occasion, rightfully so, as you can imagine, at the news that they were now free, in fact, free. And so that following year, in June 19th, that was that following year after 63. So now we're in 1866. That was really the first official Juneteenth celebration that took place in Texas. And the original observation of this Juneteenth celebration, it really were prayer meetings. There were singing of spirituals that were taking place, and people who were celebrating, what they would do is they would actually wear like new clothes as a way of representing their newfound freedom. And within a few years, African Americans all across other states began to celebrate this day as well. So interestingly enough, I want you to follow it. So Emancipation Proclamation takes place, 63. 2 years pass, word gets to Texas. And so now the residents in Texas are immediately celebrating their newfound freedom. A year later, in 1866, now we have the original celebration that was there. Word now gets where Texas was the last to hear. Now they're the first to initiate the celebration, and so now the celebration begins to spread all throughout other states, and then African Americans in other states, they were celebrating the day as well. And so the celebrations really continued across the United States until the 21st century, and they typically included the same thing. There were prayer and religious services. There were inspirational speeches that were taking place. There were educational events that would happen that would educate people on how we got to this celebration. There were a lot of family gatherings that would take place. You had people that were just kind of gathering around a table, having a meal with their families and just celebrating this newfound freedom. There were picnics that took place, all kinds of festivals with music and food and dances. So it was a time that, African Americans really just celebrated this time of freedom. Now, what I wanted to do, as you kind of get the overarching view of Juneteenth and how we got there, I just wanted to share with you a couple of facts, just a couple of facts, and we'll post these facts in the show notes if you're interested and if you want them. And so obviously fact number one is we know that this happened following the issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation back January 1st in 1863. And so we know that there was 2 years later that, this happened. And so that's the fact. But another fact that I wanted to share with you is that what happened, and I've already alluded to this already, but I wanted to kind of go deeply into what happened, how it got to Texas. And so the Union General Gordon Granger and his troops, they actually traveled to Galveston, Texas to announce this general order. They call it the General Order number 3 on June 19th, 1865. And this General Order number 3 would be known as Juneteenth. And so let me read what the General Order actually stated. So this was the General Orders number 3 that was given by Union General Gordon Granger that he presented. It said this: the people of Texas are informed that, in accordance to the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involved an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slave, and the connection hereforth existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. And so this order, this General Order number 3, was presented to the people there in Texas. So that's just a fun fact. But then a third fact that I wanted to share. So one fact was just understanding how it happened post Emancipation Proclamation. 2, going deeper, the second fact is that now General Gordon Granger, he provides this General Order number 3 that I just shared with you. But then the third fact is that a part of the General Order number 3, that newly freed people were actually encouraged to stay with their past owners. And so a part of that general order stated that that the freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. So instead of not working for wages, there was this suggestion, if you will, that, hey, maybe, it would be a great idea that newly freed people, instead of fleeing and leaving, that you should remain where you are, stay as a resident of Texas, and now work for wages with your past owners, your slave masters. But now here it comes to, some more facts of how the slaves, or former slaves, now freed men and women, responded to that. I'll get to that in a minute. But just another fact that I want to share, fact number 4, is that the period after Juneteenth is known as the scatter. And why is that? Because that's exactly what people did. So you heard what the suggestion was, a part of the general order number 3, to encourage people to stay. But then there was a period of time that the scatter took place. And what was that? That was simply many former slaves that really left the area during the original reading. So once the original reading of the general order number 3 took place, many of the now freed slaves, and they were now there was a desire to leave Texas. And so what happened is the scatter took place, where many former slaves, now freed people, they left Texas in great number to find family members and to make their way into what was known as the post-slavery United States. And so in essence, as the general order, part of that order was to encourage now newly freed slaves to stay. There was a period where then a lot of newly freed slaves, now they scattered. They were in search of family members in other states, or they just were in search of a new life outside of the state. And so that period took place where the scatter. That's another fact. Fact number 5, which I wanted to share, is that Juneteenth, it's really been celebrated under a lot of different names. So there's a lot of names that, if you really study Juneteenth, that it was given. It was called the Freedom Day. It was called Jubilee Day. It was called the Second Independence Day. It was also known as Emancipation Day. Just to name a few. So it wasn't always known exclusively as Juneteenth. It was also known as, like I said, Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, and just anything to describe the moment of time, this historical moment in history where now, individuals who were once enslaved are celebrating their newfound freedom. Point number 6, which is really interesting, that in Houston, Texas, there is a park called the Emancipation Park in Houston, Texas, that was bought specifically for Juneteenth celebration. And this 10-acre parcel was purchased by 3 former slaves, Richard Allen, Richard Brock, and Jack Yates. They actually purchased this 10-acre parcel in Houston, Texas, which is known as Emancipation Park. Now, fun fact, there is a debate on how much they really bought this 10-acre parcels for. Some say $800, some say $1,000. There's a $200 debate on how much this 10 acres parcel was actually purchased for. So we know that it was purchased, but whether it was $800 or $1,000, that is to be debated. Fact number 7, just want to share with you that during the early 20th century, you now are in the Jim Crow law era. And so during the Jim Crow law era, so the early 20th century, we would see now Juneteenth celebrations would begin to decline. So here now, as we're kind of entering into Jim Crow laws, civil rights movements, and all that stuff, we would see that there was like this decline in the celebration of freedom, and in addition to that, you also had the Great Depression that would take place, and during the Great Depression, it actually forced many black farming families away from the rural areas into the what was deemed as the urban environments to seek work, and because there was not this ability to kind of live this free life where you're on the farm, you're farming, you kind of have a life, a pace of life that really allowed you time to celebrate when you wanted to celebrate, cultivate time with family. Because of the inability to do that now, because of Great Depression, now they had to go, these black families or working people within the black families have to go to these urban areas and seek work, and they would have to work 2 or 3 jobs and do as much as they can. So obviously that prevented something as simple as the need to work multiple jobs. It prevented time for men and women to really have to celebrate Juneteenth, and also because of the representation of Jim Crow laws, this now also put a little dampening on the desire to celebrate or the amount of people that were celebrating at that time. Fun fact number 8, that the celebration of Juneteenth actually was revived during the civil rights movement. And so we're coming from an era where the Jim Crow laws dampened the celebration of freedom. But now as we come into, the crux of the civil rights movement, that now we saw there was somewhat of a revitalization of the celebration of Juneteenth. And so there was this march that was planned by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Entitled the Poor People's March. And the Poor People March was purposely scheduled to actually coincide with the Juneteenth date, because the Poor People's March really had participants celebrating, kind of a time to rebirth or to bring back the celebration of Juneteenth. And so I appreciate Dr. Martin Luther King in particular saying, hey, okay, we see what's happening with the decline of the celebration. And with a decline of the celebration, what happens? There is a decline of awareness. And so if we're not celebrating, we're not bringing awareness, and there is a lack of educational events taking place where not just people within the African American community are educating their children and their loved ones, but also people in other communities are being educated on historical facts and what has happened in our country, the great things that have happened in our country, what should be celebrated. And again, remember that general order talked about the equality of people. And so Dr. King, obviously, with the civil rights movement, Dr. King wanted to kind of revitalize and revive the Juneteenth celebration. So he used the Poor People's March to really kind of coincide with the date. And so March participants, they took the celebration back to their homes, and then soon after they would take it back to their homes, then now the holiday is kind of having a rebirth, if you will. And so there was this encouragement to remember our history, remember what was the purpose of this Juneteenth celebration in the first place, and let's not diminish that truth, not diminish that reality, but remember that reality. And so then another fact as we continue to kind of progress through that is after that Juneteenth celebrations, they really kind of continued, and they were sporadic. It really wasn't. Some years that it was highlighted a little bit more than others, but there were celebrations that would continue. And so post the Poor People's March, after Dr. King really was very intentional of trying to give this holiday and celebration a little bit of revitalization, what would happen is there were begin to be kind of annual times where there were public readings of the Emancipation Proclamation. There were annual times where people would come together and they would sing traditional songs. That's why you think about like old Negro spirituals and singing and dancing, those traditions that have been embedded in African American culture. You saw those traditions and rituals being brought back into these times of celebrating. There were reading of works that were noted by African American writers, and so you would have a lot of different poetries or literatures that were read of African American writers, and so it was a moment to celebrate, if you will, somewhat kind of what we do for Black History Month. When you think about Black History Month, we kind of highlight the accomplishments of African Americans in history. And so this Juneteenth celebration was a very similar type of celebration and commemoration and a time where African Americans internally were talking about, some of the great men and women who've come before them, but also as a time to share our history with our brothers and sisters from other ethnic groups. And so we saw celebrations that, continue post the Poor People's March. But then finally, the final facts I just want to share with you is that on June 17th in 21, it was passed that Juneteenth would become a national holiday and that it would be deemed Juneteenth National Independence Day Act. That National Independence Day Act was officially made a federal holiday. So we know that in 2021, on June 17th, that this act, the Juneteenth National Independence Act, made Juneteenth a federal holiday. And what's very significant about this particular signing of this act was that it was this holiday was the first holiday to be approved of its kind since President Ronald Reagan signed the 1983 bill that approved MLK Jr. Day as a federal holiday. So that's really the significance of the June 17, 21 signing, because it had not been since President Reagan in 83 signed the MLK Bill Day. So that really, friends, I just wanted to share quickly. I hope that helped for many of you who were wondering and just trying to get an idea of what's Juneteenth all about. I hear people talking about it. I don't really fully understand it. And so I just really honestly, more than anything else, want to give you context and content on the Juneteenth holidays. And so that is my time, my friend. Hope that was helpful. I'll put these facts in our show notes if you wanted to print them out and go over them, read them some more yourself. But as always, friends, I pray that you will share, leave a comment and say, man, Jeff, thank you so much. Brent, we're praying for you while you're in the lab, creating incredible resources. And again, continue, my friends, if you don't mind, please keep our team in prayer as we prepare for SLU 101 through 301, and we're so excited about what God is allowing us to do as we get to partner with students and Christian schools across the country this summer. So until next time, friends, make sure you are very intentional, that every day you're trying to be the best version of yourself. As always, you can follow my brother Brent at Brent A. Crow. You can follow me at I am Jeff Wallace, and you can follow our ministry at SLU Lead. It's at SLU Lead. Until next time, God bless you. We'll see you. Peace out.